Good evening and welcome to another edition of TalkSports, where we speak with the movers and shakers in sports, the sportsmen, sportswomen, administrators, the past and current. Well, this week, our special guest is the president of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, or CANOC, Mr. Brian Lewis. Mr. Lewis is also the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, and where he joins us live from his homeland in Trinidad as we welcome Mr. Lewis. Good evening to you, Mr. Lewis.
Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to be on TalkSport live from Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, glad to know you glad to know you're Port of Spain. But how things are? Let me ask you first of all, how things are progressing in Trinidad and Tobago, especially with the lockdown, and I believe your borders are still closed. Yeah.
Yes, the borders are still closed. I mean, COVID-19 has been tremendously disruptive, and it's been really a tough period of time, not just for us here in Trinidad and Tobago, but throughout the world, in the Caribbean. It's just a matter of trying to survive, stay safe, stay healthy. The economy is under significant pressure. The sport has been basically shut down. It's now, they're gradually getting back up in a very controlled way, but the priority here still remains to stay safe, stay healthy, wear a mask, social distance, and sanitize. This COVID-19 is for this generation. It's serious, man. It's like our version of World War II.
And with all these restrictions, sports, you will say, finding a niche to get public focus, and in some instances, to get the public to focus, and in some instances, return communities to some level of normalcy, would you say?
Well, I don't see us returning to any semblance of normalcy for quite a while again, probably maybe by 2023. It's some good news recently in terms of a vaccine, but I think that's still a little way away. So everyone, people forget, for example, that most of us involved in sport at the Olympic Committee level, we have volunteers. It's unpaid. No allowances as it's used in the national federations to get remuneration. So we are strictly volunteers, unpaid, no podiums and no stipends. So that means, I simply say that to say that most of us are either involved in businesses or professions or have jobs, and those have all been impacted. I myself, involved in small business here, and that's been significantly impacted. So in addition to all of that, we also have to look at how do we navigate our various sports and sport organizations through this incredibly difficult period.
Okay.
To answer your question, in short, it's not normal, man. It's now becoming quite a cliche, but this is not normal.
And we're speaking, well, if you can continue and just hitting on Trinidad and Tobago as it is now, because you're also the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. Today, Thursday, November 19th, significant for Trinidad and Tobago in terms of sports. As you recall, many years ago, on its road to the World Cup, Trinidad and Tobago, it was November 19th, you know. And then significant also today is that FIFA, what should I say, basically lifted the suspension on the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. There was some level of cautiousness whether or not Trinidad and Tobago will continue in terms of their football qualification and participation in regional and international tournaments with the suspension. Today is significant in that FIFA lifting that. I know you had a lot to say in the past few weeks during that period with the normalization committee and other things happening between TTFA and FIFA. So are you satisfied that the suspension has actually been lifted and things now looking good for the TTFA?
Well, Trinidad and Tobago should never have been suspended in the first place. So that's the type of games international federations such as FIFA, that's the type of games they play. FIFA is a law unto them, unto their own selves. You know, I find it very, I can't see how objective people who have a sense of fair play and claim to have, you know, to believe in justice and fairness could feel comfortable in arguing that FIFA's bringing the normalization committee after only a couple months of a new administration that was democratically elected, how that could have been deemed fair and a sterling and exemplary example of good governance. So the fact that that had occurred, and of course the affected executive found the hurdles at Court of Arbitration of Sport, which is supposed to be the guardians of fairness and equity in the international sport system. You know, there were some issues that were articulated both by the Court of Appeal here in Trinidad and Tobago and the High Court in terms of the actions of FIFA and the Court of Arbitration of Sport. So that's there, regardless of that FIFA and their cohorts and those who are beneficiaries of the FIFA system will claim. On the contrary, that to me is an example of why global sport and sport throughout the world is faced with a lot of issues where governance is concerned, and that you know that sport administrators make more headlines than the athletes and footballers these days.
Okay. While we're on that, Mr. Lewis, even closer to home, I know you will have more to say on FIFA, IOC, international sports, and I like something you mentioned, governance, because I know you have been an advocate of good governance in sports, diversity, gender equality, all these things are things we need to talk about. What's the status of the Caribbean Games?
In terms of repeat the question again, the status of the
Caribbean Games, yeah.
The Caribbean Games has been was scheduled for 2021, and one of the things that and the issues that was brought to the first ever virtual CANOC AGM, you know, which incidentally was the 18th anniversary, the 18th CANOC AGM. And it was held on the 18th of November, 2020. Very interesting, you know, as Caribbean people and numbers. So whatever issues, but a report that was made, the the host, Guadeloupe, presented that due to COVID-19, and as you know, Guadeloupe is a is that correct? Dependency of France. And you know that France, they have, again, faced with a second wave, France have instituted some very stringent measures to try to manage the infection rate. So there are some challenges now in Guadeloupe in terms of, for example, the hotel that they have targeted as being the Games Village, that has been closed indefinitely because of COVID-19. And so that the Guadeloupe hosting the Caribbean Games in 2021 is very challenged. So that Guadeloupe presented those conditionalities and proposed alternative dates in 2022. So that was accepted by the CANOC General Assembly, Annual General AGM. And we have three date options that the membership of CANOC will now consider. But the Caribbean Games will be held is now rescheduled to 2022. Incidentally, you may recall, and your viewers and listeners may recall that in 2009, Trinidad Tobago was due to host the first Caribbean game, and H1N1, the H1N1 virus, dovetailed those plans. So it again, 11 years later, this time it's a COVID-19, and that has caused impacted the Caribbean game. But I must commend Guadeloupe for their commitment to hosting the Caribbean Games.
Okay, but with that in mind, what do you think? Are you confident that next year's Summer Olympics, which incidentally should have been this year, will take place? There's still some level of debate, some level of nonchalant as to whether or not the Olympic Games in Tokyo will go ahead come 2021.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there will be a Tokyo 2020 Games in 2021. It has been rescheduled to the 2021, and the 23rd of July will be the start of the Games. And all the utterances made by the International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach and the Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee suggests in no uncertain manner that the Games will be held, COVID-19 or not. So at this point, I have no doubt in my mind that the Games will be held. I mean, it is, even if it is for the purely practical reason, and it's not, that Games, if the Games will be cancelled, there will be a significant negative financial impact. And when one considers that, regardless of what reserves there may be, it will have a negative financial impact if the Games weren't held, because the next time that the IOC will earn broadcast rights, if you look at the funding model of the Olympic movement and the IOC, won't be before 2024. That's a real deep, dark rabbit hole. So the Olympic Games will be held. I know that some people may have an issue with that because it may suggest that safety and health is not the primary consideration and priority, and that money is. But I think that with the guidance of the World Health Organization, and I can imagine some of the finest public health experts available, the IOC being a really big gorilla in terms of its financial power and influence, that the IOC will receive the best available public health guidance it can. And the Japanese in Tokyo, they had already been planning a games that was way ahead in terms of technology, in terms of a futuristic approach. So I'm quite sure with those minds at work, there will be a Tokyo 2020 games rescheduled to 2021.
You said that you had your first virtual meeting, the CANOC meeting, on Wednesday. What were some of the concerns being raised by your NOCs regarding the Tokyo Games?
Interestingly enough, the main concerns of the National Olympic Committees of the CANOC, which includes the Spanish, Dutch, French, English, Caribbean, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Aruba, Jamaica, Barbados, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Trinidad and Tobago, across the board, was a concern for the athletes and the negative impact on our athletes in terms of their preparation, but just in terms of their economic and financial welfare, because for most of the athletes, especially those in track and field, which really is the number one Olympic sport in the Caribbean, with track and field being curtailed, most of the athletes at the elite world level, their income, their ability to earn an income would have been negatively impacted. The Diamond League has been shut down. Most of their contracts would be performance-based. So that has been the real challenge for the NOCs, in addition to the impact on their national sport federations, etc. But staying safe and staying healthy remains a priority. Health is your wealth in the face of a force such as COVID, as COVID-19, which as I said, have been devastating in all aspects of human life, and it's been global. So that was one of the main concerns in the context of the National Olympic Committees. But off the field, there were a number of issues of concern. But what I was tremendously encouraged by was, from the CANOC executive perspective, our commitment and the determination to have an AGM and to have it virtually and to overcome all the constitutional and logistical issues really was to also provide the leadership to the Caribbean Olympic movement and to send a clear and strong message that, notwithstanding the devastation of COVID-19, that we in the Olympic movement in the Caribbean, that we were determined to not just survive, but to strive and to embrace the opportunities within the crisis of this unprecedented pandemic. So from that perspective, the the virtual AGM had an energy that I had never experienced in the 18 years of CANOC. Because as you know, the Caribbean can be a very complex region. As you know, Michael, we Caribbean people, people tend from outside the region tend to look at us as a one Caribbean. But as you know, we are a very complex group when we are ready. So, we have had our challenges over the years where holding the Caribbean from a unity perspective, where unity is our strength and strength is our unity, has proven challenging at times. And we have, for example, not had the impact, for example, at elections in continental groupings that we ought to have as a region, because we were easily fractured. But yesterday at this AGM, which was virtual, there was that energy. I think that we were unified in our determination to prevail through this unprecedented pandemic that has upended sports and life as we know it.
And you have set what some may consider very unrealistic goals for Olympians in Trinidad and Tobago. But you are convinced that Trinidad and Tobago have the potential to surpass, perennial expectation. Why so?
Well, let me say this. So I know you're referring. I'm just saying. I'd have loved to only talk about the Caribbean, so I'd set a goal when I became president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee of 10 or more Olympic gold medals by the year 2024. For that, I've received a lot of criticism. I don't call it unjust. I suppose if I was looking on at myself, I would criticize me because 10 or more Olympic gold medals by the year 2024 seems a moonshot. Given that we have only had 2 and now a third with the reassignment of the 2008 4x100 meters men's gold medal, so we have 3, and this is since our first appearance at an Olympic Games. This is Trinidad and Tobago in 1948. But so I've been criticized by many, including Olympians and experts. But for me, 10 or more Olympic gold medals is not a focus on the medals and the metal that is the medal, but it is a focus on the potential of the human being and the youth and young people that have a talent in sports and that aspire to be the best version of themselves. So for me, what do you tell a young man and a young girl who can run fast and who love to feel the breeze on their face? What do we tell them? So they've decided that this is their passion and they can faster, higher, stronger, and that they dream of being an Olympic champion. What do we tell them? That dream is unrealistic, that they cannot be an Olympic champion. So all I did was articulate the dream of every young boy and girl who aspires to be the best that they can be in their chosen sport, who believe that they have the potential and talent to be an Olympic champion. And what I simply felt, because myself being a young boy who grew up single parent and saw my very own mother struggle to bring up 4 children, or 4 pick-me, as they call it. What kept me going and kept me pivoting away from at-risk behavior was my mother's ongoing encouragement that I was better than where I was at a particular point in time. And the only thing that can limit me is my own lack of imagination. Strive to be the best that you can be. I believe every young boy or girl who's passionate about a particular sport and want to give it their all and want to be the best version of themselves in that sport, that they needed to have a Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee and Trinidad and Tobago Olympic movement leaders who was not afraid to, like them, dream big. Because what inherently would have been happening all this time is that their dreams were stifled by sports administrators who were willing to impose their own lack of self-confidence and their own lack of belief in their talent and potential on young boys and girls. And that, in a very real way, is why I was inspired and motivated by the young boys and girls on the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago who dared to dream of being the best version of themselves.
And you think that it's worthy of other sports administrators in the Caribbean to do likewise and inspire their constituents?
Well, let me put it this way. I don't think in Jamaica they suffer from delusions of mediocrity because Jamaica has set the standard and they are the flag bearers really of Olympic success here in the Caribbean. I'm not afraid to acknowledge that. I believe that the rest of the Caribbean, and I speak, remember, in the context of the Olympic and Commonwealth sports movement here in the Caribbean, whether you're Spanish, French, Dutch, English, Papiamento, Creole, and Patois. Jamaica is the standard bearer. And there's no reason why we cannot, in the Caribbean, strive to encourage our athletes to put the structures in place that gives the athletes the pathway to the Olympic podium. So to answer your question, I would hate to think that Olympic sport leaders get involved in the Olympic movement for the trips and for the opportunity to ride on the backs of their athletes while not serving the athletes. So if it is that we are an Olympic movement and a Commonwealth movement, which really is at the top of the pyramid of sport, the Olympic Games, every athlete in an Olympic sport aspires to go to the Olympic Games and aspires to be on an Olympic podium, to hear their national anthem play and to see their national flag raised, then to me, it is a duty, obligation, and responsibility of Olympic sport leaders to create that safe space for the youth and young people to aspire and to dream to be an Olympic champion and to stand at that podium in front of billions of people watching on television and to hear the national anthem play and that flag being raised. And I think that, as I said, we have a duty, obligation, and responsibility. But it doesn't matter to me who laughs. I know because I've been told that. So while others laugh, the media, the Olympians who would have gone to an Olympics and maybe not podiumed, they criticize and complain and condemn, and that's all right. Because everybody is entitled to their own opinion, and I will first of all, even if I am the subject of negative criticism and opinion, I've always known, and people, you can check, anyone can check. I will fight for the right of somebody to express an opinion, even if it is negative. Now, I mean, there's a line, slander, libel being defamatory, but I don't have to agree with your opinion. That's your right to your opinion. But I have no regrets, absolutely none, about setting a goal, a big goal of 10 or more Olympic gold medals by the year 2024, or 10 or more Olympic champions. But if you switch the focus, as I was saying earlier, from the medal and the metal to the human being, then I have no regrets. I have no regrets in encouraging young people to dream and to dream big and to dream of being the best version of yourself.
Mm-hmm. And you made mention of Jamaica, and Jamaica as a model, especially as it comes to track and field and track and field glory in the Caribbean.
I love to support Jamaica once they're not competing against Trinidad.
we all love to support them, but this
Jamaica has made the finals and Trinidad and Tobago is not in the final. Hey, we want Jamaica to do the job. But once we're there and it's the red, white, and black versus Jamaica, then hey, may the best person win, but I'm all for Trinidad and Tobago, which puts me in a situation because I also really had the president of the Caribbean Association.
Well, yeah, and this week in particular, the Jamaica paid off the balance of a medical bill for a former athlete who had a medical emergency while competing in the United States in 2019, January 2019. The athlete's medical insurance picked up a portion of the bill, and the Jamaica Athletes Fund paid a portion of it. But the government, there was a balance, and the government chipped in and paid that. So my question to you, Mr. Lewis, as president of CANOC, do you believe that respective national federations, sporting federations to be exact, in the Caribbean should set up a medical insurance scheme for their constituents, or is it something that you think is feasible?
Well, what I can say is that if I use the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee as an example, we have been trying for a number of years to get an insurance plan in place for our athletes, and we have not succeeded. I know, for example, Barbados has something in place with Sagicor, but that having been said, I'm aware that there are some challenges in terms of putting in place a plan for sport and athletes. It is not easy as it seems. And incidentally, for those who may feel that, again, I'm talking off the top of my head, my substantive career, I've been involved in the insurance industry for over 30 years. I'm a qualified and licensed insurance broker. So if it's one person who was determined and committed and dedicated to putting in place an insurance plan, it would be me. And I myself have been stymied for technical insurance reasons, underwriting, etc., by that failure and inability. Even now as I speak, we are continuing conversation. We would have had, meaning Trinidad and Tobago, we'd have had Guardian Life as our partner for a number of years. And even now, I continue that discussion with various insurance companies here in Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm just saying that yes, the answer to your question is that in an ideal world, we will have a universal insurance coverage for athletes across the board, but there are some technical insurance reasons why it's very challenging to do that, as opposed to a bigger country where there are bigger numbers. So at the end of the day, it's a number game, and there's always the possibility and there's always the risk of what is called an insurance anti-selection. But I don't want to debate in that, because then it gets into a technical insurance conversation. And you want to talk about sports, right?
Well, yeah, and whether or not you think it's, the medical insurance for athletes in the Caribbean is something feasible, is something that federations should pursue. Whether it's in Jamaica, well, Jamaica does have one for the athletes, but Grenada's, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, wherever it is, that's something that the federation should.
Where it can be put in place and where there is an insurance company that is willing to take on the risk, yes. But I'm also saying it's not as easy as it sounds. But the answer, ideally, is yes. But it is not as easy as it sounds. As I said, I use the example, whether people want to accept it or not. We have been trying for a lot of years here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Mm-hmm. On to another issue, cricket. I know cricket is not considered
a big sport.
Well,
but recently it was announced that women's cricket will be on the Birmingham 22 program in the Commonwealth Games.
Right.
And that's absolutely fantastic.
Okay, and the question I'm asking you now is in the context of cricket still not considered an Olympic sport, but as you indicated, it was announced that women's cricket will make an historic appearance at the 2022 Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, albeit not the first time cricket, because I think cricket was played in Kuala Lumpur in 1998.
1998 in Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah, 1998, right? They had men's cricket there. So
50 overs cricket,
men's cricket. This time we have women's T20 cricket. But the West Indies, and here my point now, obviously the West Indies is recognized by the ICC. In the Commonwealth Games, they recognize individual territories. So it means, therefore, there will have to be a qualifying tournament to know which territory in the West Indies will basically represent the West Indies, I should say. So the question is, what sort of discussion, whether it started, whether it initiated, whatever, what's the thinking regarding collaboration between the ICC, CWI, the CANOC, CGA, all the stakeholders involved in terms of that qualifying situation, because I think only the West Indies that will be affected to that extent in terms of having a team represent the West Indies?
Nada.
Nothing as yet.
Nada. But that having been said, because of the 1998 scenario with the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, most of the Caribbean National Olympic Committees also act as Commonwealth Games Association. So, for example, the Trinidad and Tobago Cricket Board is an affiliate of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, which is also the Trinidad and Tobago Commonwealth Games Association. So I say that to say that of 2022, this is not a new or something that will be entirely new for the Commonwealth Games associations in the Caribbean, given the experience of 1998 Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So it is understood that it will be individual countries. And even in the context of the West Indies Cricket Board, the history of participation in the West Indies Cricket Board structure has been individual countries originated. I know that T20 have a slightly different format where you can get players from different countries playing under like the TT Red Force or the St. Lucia Dist or the Guyana Amazon. But I don't think it's going to be as complex as it may appear. I think that they will have a tournament, and the winner will represent the slot that may be allocated to the West Indies by virtue of what was agreed between the Commonwealth Games Federation and the ICC and its members. So I don't anticipate, to be honest with you, I don't anticipate much of an issue. I do know it's going to be an awesome experience for whichever one of the Caribbean countries emerges as the champions and will represent the region, but more importantly, will represent their country at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham in 2022. Playing in a multi-sport game is really a whole different level of experience. And I remember in 1998, how thrilled, Sachin Tendulkar, I believe, I could vaguely recall him making very positive statements. I recall, as an example, I think Antigua and Barbuda represent. They were in that event. I hope my memory has not failed me, but I distinctly remember seeing how thrilled they were, and I'm almost sure. I remember watching an interaction between, I think it was Winston Benjamin and his fellow athletes. So I stand very corrected. I hope I wasn't dreaming. But the point being that it's an experience that I'm absolutely confident that the cricketers who have that opportunity to play and represent their country and podium at the Birmingham 2020 Commonwealth Games will come away with an experience and memories, positive memories that will last a lifetime.
Okay. So back in 2015, I think, well, you were not president. at the time, but you were on the board of CANOC, if I think it was led by Mr. Steve Stout of Barbados at that time, if I'm correct, right? But during the CANOC's General Assembly in Suriname, it was stated that the CANOC's Academy, if I'm correct, was engaged with the Canadian Olympic Committee on some long-term athletes development model. I don't know if there's anything about it, but are we anywhere near this intended model, something that we'd have adopted from the Canadian?
I think you're referring to, there was something called an Academies Commission, which really they built along the concept of the International Olympic Academy, the IOA. And so a number of NOCs have what they call an Education and Academies Commission. So yes, there was a project with Sport for Life out of Canada, and the Sport for Life project continues, and I would positively say it's a work in progress. Various countries continue to push it. I know Trinidad and Tobago, even this week, we have a long-term athlete development project with a particular focus on talent identification going on with part of our memorandum of understanding with the University of Trinidad and Tobago and the TTOC High Performance Partner, the Michael Johnson Performance Center. Various countries have continued that effort. St. Lucia, for one, but it's a work in progress. Why it's a work in progress? Long-term athlete development, and that's what you were referring to, Sport for Life Canada, is just what it is, long-term athlete development. And it's not a quick fix. It's not short. It's across the span, in that it takes 10 to 15 years from introduction at the foundation level to becoming an elite level athlete. It's a 10 to 15 year project. And that requires not just funding, but a very strong, evolved, developed, disciplined structure. And a number of the Caribbean islands, should be told, sport successes coming out of sport is in spite of rather than because of. And it's just to do with the societal makeup, how, for example, in a number of territories, physical education in schools is not as strong and defined and embedded as it should be. So there are challenges that the Olympic committees have to continue to work with various stakeholders to overcome. That's not trying to dance the subject or not. It's just a statement of fact. We still have in a number of Caribbean countries, Trinidad and Tobago, I don't want to be saying Trinidad and Tobago, this is a fact, that the SEA exam and academics take precedent over physical activity and sports, and that has an impact in terms of the long-term athlete development model. But I remain confident that with consistent effort, pounding at it, we will see, not in every country, but we will see in the countries that remain disciplined about it and structured, they will reap the benefit of putting in place a very well-structured long-term athlete development program.
Mm-hmm. And have you or have CANOC been able, succeeded in getting an agenda item on the role of sports in the region on CARICOM's heads of government meetings? I know year after year this is something that is being talked about, but has CANOC succeeded in that regard?
Yes, you're quite right. It has been, since I've been involved at the level of CANOC, it has been a recurring decimal, which is a source of some frustration. But I have to say that we appear to have made some significant progress. Between 2017 and now, the CANOC has been involved with the CARICOM Secretariat and other stakeholders in the development of a draft strategic plan for the services sector in CARICOM and a draft implementation plan. I would have represented CANOC at a number of these meetings. In fact, in January, February of this year, I went to Guyana for what I call the COTEC, the Council of Trade and Economic Development. And their presentation was made of this draft strategic and implementation plan at the level of COTEC. And so that the services sector is a particular focus for CARICOM and COTEC, which is the Council of Trade and Economic Development. And sporting services is part of that, of the 7 subsectors under the services sector, strategic plan and implementation plan of CARICOM. And so the issue of a sport desk, a CARICOM sport desk, as we surface, to assist in the implementation, so to speak, of this services sector plan with the particular focus of the sporting services sector. And we in CANOC has offered to assist with the establishment of the sport desk in the CARICOM Secretariat. Recently, communication from the CARICOM Secretariat outlined the cost structure for this. It's about $127,000 US. For the 2-year period, of course, that type of funding for that activity is not something that CANOC currently is in possession of. But certainly, CANOC can look at working with various public-private entities, looking at what grants may be available out there in the wider, whether it is European Union, UN, Organization of American States, or those types of bodies. So I'm saying that in terms of CARICOM, in terms of a sporting services sector, CANOC has been part of the conversation at the table in terms of that. So that's to me and to the CANOC executive is a major development, positive development. Also, there's a project developing for a proposal for the development of a Caribbean court of arbitration to sport. So I know that people will say, well, oh man, we're still struggling with the Caribbean Court of Justice, and the states, the relevant countries embracing that. So why would you feel, and why would CANOC feel that they can successfully establish a Caribbean Court of Arbitration for sport? So that's a project that we're working on.
And just by way of intervention, that Caribbean sports, well, Caribbean Court of Arbitration in Sports, will it more or less override what is the International Court of Arbitration in Sports?
Well,
or what would be the mechanism?
Well, let me put it this way. There are obviously going to be a lot of conversation and discussion in it, because there are still people who feel that we should retain the Privy Council. I think we will have the same types of debate, robust debate, about a Caribbean Court of Arbitration for Sport. But if you use the very same FIFA and TTFA matter, one of the challenges that the United TTFA faced when they were unceremoniously went out of office under less than satisfactory circumstances, they were faced with a bill, I think, of 400,000 TT, which they could have ill afford. And there is a basic rule of law that for justice and the scales of justice to be equal, it shouldn't depend on anyone's ability to fund their pursuit of justice. I think that if there was one case that presented a clear, crystal clear argument for a Caribbean, or let me put it this way, a less expensive access to justice for the Caribbean, that is one. So I accept and acknowledge there will be pros and cons. There will be strong views and strong emotions on both sides of the debate. But I think that CANOC cannot absolve itself from putting that on the agenda because of fear of robust debate, even strong criticism. There are a lot of profound reasons why we need to examine and challenge each other on why we ought not to have a Caribbean Court of Arbitration for Sport, notwithstanding the challenges and opposition that the Caribbean CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, still faced. So to your point, Michael, I was just saying that from a CANOC perspective now, CANOC, in my view, must not be afraid to take on big challenges that gives CANOC a voice on behalf of the Caribbean's Olympic and Commonwealth sport movement. They are a big issue, whether it be social justice issues, Black Lives Matter, Rule 50, CANOC as the umbrella body for the Olympic movement and the Commonwealth sport movement in the region. It can't be that we only see our role to jump on a plane and go to games, and that's it. I mean, if that's the attitude and approach that we're going to continue to take, then what we're really saying is that CANOC and the various national Olympic committees are nothing more than glorified travel agents. And we aren't. There are so many significant issues that impact our youth and young people and athletes in sport and our stakeholders that is just not narrowly confined to sport and sport alone and playing the game. That's not the real world now. And what COVID-19 has done is accelerated and being a catalyst for bringing that reality on the table. Because as an example, we see now a situation where this generation of athletes and subscribing to they must be seen and not heard. Activism on issues of social injustices is a reality, and the International Olympic Committee and Thomas Bach could do all they want about keeping Rule 50, which is as a legacy of Avery Brundage, a former IOC president that is acknowledged as a racist. And the hierarchy of the IOC could talk all they want about. They don't see the IOC's role to rewrite history, but it's not going to go away. And I mean, I don't want to pivot. So recently, they had all kind of positive news about, the NBA and how the season is going to be shortened to facilitate participation at the Olympic Games. But I hope in that joy and embrace of the prospects of the best professional basketballers participating at the Olympic Games in Tokyo 2020, that the IOC and the Olympic movement recognizes that the professional basketball players are some of the most vocal advocates against social injustices, in particular systemic racism and racial discrimination and inequalities in sport. So my point being, the role of a sports administrator is beyond just the games and being a glorified travel agency.
I allow you to go ahead because it was a nice segue into some of the questions I wanted to ask you. You touched on the whole issue.
My apologies, Michael. I really
No. I'm saying I left you uninterrupted because it was a nice segue into the questions I wanted to ask you regarding social injustices, and that was nice. I mean, although I want to squeeze in a couple more minutes, although we ran out of time, but I want to squeeze in a couple of minutes for you to develop on that point, because I know you have been a strong advocate for and on the issues related to diversity in sports, gender equalities, and I'm asking you whether or not you think, even though your focus has been a lot on global issues, global sports, what sort of progress we have made, especially in the Caribbean, on those issues?
In terms of let me make sure I don't run off on a tangent.
No, but the whole issue of gender equality and diversity in sports.
Well, if you look at the whole issue of sexism and gender inequalities in sport, it's because sports traditionally, especially out of the European model, came out of colonialism, and the British dominance of the global dominance back in the day. And sports, therefore, is not just a construct of colonialism, but male patriarchal realities. Sport has historically been an old boys club, and in many ways, an old white male club. And facts will show that when you look at the absence of women at the decision-making and head table in sport in particular, and the Olympic movement in particular, the evidence is compelling that in a modern era and modern day, where all aspects of human life is supposed to reflect the diversity of the realities of human participation, that is an untenable situation. It can't and ought not to be allowed to perpetuate. And whether it is gender discrimination and gender inequalities or racial discrimination and inequalities, whether that is against Black, brown, indigenous people, first people, women, disabled, whoever, LGBTQs, the fact is that sport pontificates, and the Olympic movement in particular pontificates on the Olympic values of respect, friendship, excellence, and all these sorts of things. But action speaks louder than words.
What's the program like for CANOC for the remainder of 2020 and into probably the first quarter, or even the first, the half of the year prior to the 2020/21 Tokyo Olympic Games? What are some of the programs? I know, as you said, that you had your first virtual meeting yesterday on Wednesday. So what are some of the things, if you permitted to say, what were some of the things that were discussed for public consumption?
Well, you know, as one delegate said, post during the virtual AGM, where we were very, very pleased and honored to have remarks coming from Thomas Bach himself, IOC President, Nevin Illick of the Pan Am Sports Organization, Louise Martin, President of the Commonwealth Games Federation, and Louis Mejias, President of Central Caribbean Sport. We also had the presence of Camilo Perez, the President of ODESU, the South America Sport Organization. As one delegate said, you know, COVID, because of COVID, they thought that not much was happening, but when they heard the CANOC executive report, they realized that a lot was happening, because, as I said, you know, we have incorporated the virtual realities, so that coming out of the AGM, where the report was accepted and approved, and therefore what some of the strategic plan and some of the initiatives that the CANOC executive that we are taking, we will continue those things, whether it is the continuing the pursuing the establishment of the Caribbean Court of Caribbean Court of Arbitration for Sport, the initiative with CARICOM in terms of the sports desk, and supporting the implementation of the strategic plan of the development of the services sector, of which sporting services is a subsector. We are working on a marketing, a collaborative marketing effort for CANOC and the CANOC members. We are pursuing preliminary discussions, hopefully to advance in terms of a memorandum of understanding, so to speak, with the open campus of the University of the West Indies. Of course, there would be the Olympic Games. We are also pursuing rigorously the issue of the associate members, and the associate members, that is CANOC members, or associate members, considered associate members, in getting them to be accepted by Pan Am Sport. That's a huge one. We are also going to be pursuing, there is a CANOC coaching certificate program, which we will continue to pursue and encourage the region on the necessary authorities to recognize this coaching course, and to encourage the stakeholders throughout the region to take it. We are also pursuing efforts at building a stronger bridge and collaboration between Spanish Caribbean, French Caribbean, Dutch Caribbean, and the English-speaking Caribbean Olympic movement.
Well, I know we have exhausted time. Quite a lot have been said. I want to thank you, Mr. Lewis, always willing to speak on the issues of sports. And you can follow Mr. Lewis's columns, writings in the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian, I'm correct, right?
It's a column that comes out on a Tuesday, Things That Matter. I do it voluntary.
Yeah.
Those who want to do that, I think so, yeah. But I'm always willing to be open with the media, the public. I am a strong believer in transparency and accountability.
And good governance.
and good governance. I mean, I may not always like the questions or always like the views that are expressed, but I respect people's right to those views and to ask questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate and thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. And I wish you all the best with your president. By the way, before you leave, in terms of CANOC, I know you had an AGM yesterday, but when I know you were re-elected about 3 years ago, because you came in for Mr.
Yeah,
Stout.
I came in the middle of, so Mr. Steve Stout had made a commitment to basically, I mean, he'd been there for so long. So I would have taken up 2 years of the remaining of his term, then was re-elected. So the next elected annual general meeting for CANOC is in 2022. However, I believe there is a constitutional aspect to it, because CANOC, one of the Olympic sport organizations that have a term limitation, Trinidad and Tobago is also one, a 2-year term limitation. So I know that there is a constitutional interpretation that says even though you came into office in the middle of a term, that still counts as a term. So if that interpretation stands, then April, whenever the election is held, more likely October 2022, that would be the completion of the 2-term limitation. I'm a big supporter of term limitation, so I'm not going to look for a way around it. I mean, if it is very clear that doesn't count, the 2-year period doesn't count as a full term, then fine. If it does, then I'm more than happy to pass the baton, hopefully to a female, because I've clearly and strongly advocated, let me say this in going, that the next president of the International Olympic Committee, the Association of National Olympic Committee, Pan Am Sports, Central Caribbean Sports, CANOC, and in my case, Trinidad and Tobago, should be a female. It's about time.
What a nice way to end. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis.
Remember, stay safe, stay healthy, wear your social distance, and sanitize. Health is wealth in the face of COVID-19.
Okay, then. Well said, Mr. Lewis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, then. Right. So that's Mr. Brian Lewis. He is the president of the Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committees, CANOC, representing Olympic committees in English, French, Dutch, Spanish, and as he indicated, some of them speak Papiamentos, Creole, and Patois, yeah, around the region. Quite a number, I think in excess of 20-something NOCs in the Caribbean. They carry quite some weight, as we'll say. And he's also the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. And as he indicated, he has a weekly column in the Trinidad Guardian, and you can follow it, and quite interesting, indeed. Follow all his writings, and you can go back and just Google Brian Lewis, and you'll see quite a number. And he's not afraid. If there's one person that you can get that can challenge the status quo, it's Mr. Brian Lewis. You know, he always come with and to give him kudos, he is regarded as very innovative because he comes up with so many things at times that people always try to figure out what is Mr. Lewis's thinking. He will run a marathon. He will, whatever it is. But then in the final analysis, you know what he's trying to achieve. And sometimes, as he says, is trying to inspire the athletes. And when we talk about athletes, we're not just talking about track and field here. Whether you're a swimmer, cricketer, footballer, whatever it is. His mission is to inspire his constituents. And that is what he has been doing. And I want to thank him for that, He's always willing to share ideas, share readings, share, whatever it is. And I look forward to reading his columns and trying to get his thinking at times. And I wish some of our Caribbean administrators can just take just a tiny, tiny bit from his book when it comes to trying to inspire those who they lead, And, we'll discuss quite a bit in future programs, because I know one of the things I will be doing is that when we get on to other sports administrators, I will try to use some of the sayings from Mr. Lewis's conversation with us, because some very interesting points. That's why you realize I left him uninterrupted, because I didn't want him to lose his, thought pattern, But quite a number of points he raised. One, of course, will be, and I know there will be some discussions and debates in the future about the Caribbean Court of Arbitration in Sports. There will be those who, of course, will be looking forward to something like that. There will be pros and cons, as he indicated. But once again, I want to thank you for viewing. And don't forget to join us on Saturday for another edition of Talk Sports from 1 o'clock Eastern time, or that's 2 o'clock Eastern Caribbean time, where we'll be joined by the president of the Grenada Football Association, Mr. Chenny Joseph. Long awaited. Mr. Joseph will be in the hot chair. He'll be chatting with us. He was one time the vice president of the Caribbean Football Union. He is the president, a long-standing president of the Grenada Football Association. We'll be talking a number of things, including the recent decision by FIFA to reinstate the TTFA, and some other things we want to talk about. But until then, I want you to stay positive, test negative. Yes. Thank you very much.